And we'll get started in just a few minutes. If you need anything, remember we have extra supplies. It's okay to find the right height of a cushion, or we also have benches in our closet here for those of you who are in person to experiment with if sitting cross-legged isn't comfortable, or using one of the chairs. And remember, with the posture, the idea is to find a posture that is a balance of relaxation and also supporting alertness in the mind. So if you're in a chair, for example, like how you're sitting in the chair, because sometimes there's too much comfort, right? And especially if sleepiness is an issue in your practice. So the physical effort to be upright can be a nice, just create enough effort to keep the mind more alert. So you can just experiment what that balance of comfort and alertness is for you. So let's settle in. We'll do a shorter practice at the beginning. We've been learning the body scan meditation. So just allowing the awareness to recognize the sensations at the top of the head. And you might feel the weight of your hair, or if you don't have hair there, you might feel the air touching the skin of the scalp. And learning how to open and receive the sensations along the sides of the head and the ears and the back of the head. Just allowing these experiences of the head to be. Feel the forehead and the temples. Noticing any tension in the brow. Letting things be here. Intimate, without grasping, without judging. Feel both eyes. You might feel the eyelids against the eyes touching. Feeling, taking the time to feel the entire face. And we can begin just feeling the air touching the skin of the face. Again, the practice is to be open or intimate, but not judging, not controlling, just allowing. Feeling the air going in and out of the nostrils or the mouth. Noticing any tension in the jaw. Noticing if the lips are touching or whether they're apart. Noticing where the tongue is making contact in the mouth. And for a few more seconds, feeling the entire head and face together, and simply allowing all of these sensations to be what they are, to be known. Intimacy and letting things be. And we allow the awareness to drop into the throat and the neck, sides of the neck, back of the neck. Learning how to be present with even neutral sensations in the neck. And again, that simple training of being intimate, present, and at the same time allowing, in this case, the sensations in the neck and throat to be the way they are. And And then allowing the sensations in the shoulders, recognizing we're just dropping in, feeling any tension from the sides of the neck down through the tops of the shoulders and the shoulder joints. Just feeling what's ever here to feel. And letting it all be. Keeping the shoulders in mind, not forgetting. Not afraid of any tension we might feel. We allow that to be the way it is. And letting the awareness settle now into the biceps and the underarms. So from the shoulder joints down through the arm, feeling the sensations as they are. Feeling the bend of the elbows. Feeling the shirt or air touching the skin of the forearms. The wrists. Feeling the back of the hands. And noticing the touch points where the hands, palms are touching, fingers are touching. Taking the time, just if you can, sense each of the fingers, so the pinkies, and then the ring fingers, just feeling what you feel. Index fingers, little finger, thumbs, and the palms again. Just letting the arms and the hands be the way they are. So again, just this practice of being intimate or open with the sensations in the arms and hands. And at the same time, allowing, not grasping, not judging, just allowing the sensations to be. Notice that simple experience of freedom. The mind is free with the sensations, the experience of the arms and hands. So we'll begin with the torso now, just feeling the upper third, upper back, chest, rib cage, collarbones, shoulder blades. Feeling what you're feeling and letting things be. In the middle third of the torso, so the solar plexus, lower ribs, kidneys, middle of the back. Feel the spine. Learning how to be receptive, how to be both intimate and simply allowing the sensations here to be the way they are. And dropping down into the abdomen and the lower back, back of the hips, all the organs, the digestive organs here. Just feeling what we feel here. All the way down to the floor, the pelvis and the groin, hip sockets, Feel the structure of the pelvis, intimate and letting things be. And feeling both thighs, any touch points, the clothes against the skin here. The bend of the knees. The calves and the shins. The ankles all the way to the heels. And the sides and tops of both feet. Feeling what you feel, letting that be. Bottoms of the feet and toes. Feeling both feet and letting them be. Both legs, both feet, letting things be. And the whole body, top to bottom, front and back, inside, outside. Opening to the totality of the sitting body now. Receptive, open, intimate, and letting it all be what it is, feeling what we feel. And taking a little time, adjust your posture as you need to. Stretch a little if you want. And welcome back, everyone, both all of you online and those of you here in the room. And again, Stacey McClendon is still on retreat out in Massachusetts, but Stacey will be back for the last 3 weeks. And this is week 3 of our 6-week class. I really appreciate people sticking with it. You know, I'm sure you've learned in your life that if we're going to develop a new habit, you know, it's not enough to want to develop the new habit. You actually have to, you know, there's a line in neuroscience that goes something like, neurons that fire together wire together. I don't know if you've heard that. And it's like we have to go through the motions. Like if we want a practice of being present, we have to practice being present. Really wanting to be more present in life isn't the cause for being more present in life. Being present is how we become more present. It becomes the habit. It gets wired in. Just like if all we do is act out distractedness, then that's the habit that gets reinforced. It gets more deeply wired, or the groove gets more pronounced, deeper. And we just keep following those grooves of distractedness and superficiality. So the formal, you know, sitting time in the morning, in the evening, whenever you can fit it in, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever you can do, right? Once a day, twice a day, 30 times a day. Obviously, the more the better, because there's a lot of momentum towards distractedness in our culture, and because of course our mind is just a reflection of culture, right? So we've been conditioned in this culture, and so we have a distracted, superficial, reactive culture, and that's the tendencies, habits of our mind then of course reflect the conditioning force, culture. We shouldn't be surprised. Where else would the habits of this mind come from, right? So we have to, we might like the idea of just following the mind, letting the mind be, but we actually have to train it. Otherwise, we'll just keep doing what we've done and getting the results that we've gotten before. So just putting a plug in for the formal training time. And again, even if you had a busy day and you don't really have any time, then just put in a few minutes. But there's something about going to that chair or going to that cushion in that corner of your room, one of your rooms at home, putting yourself down, sitting in a way that is a balance of comfort and alertness, and finding the intention in your heart to be present. And keeping that intention in mind, right? Acting on that intention. So that when there's another intention to worry or to plan or to fantasize or imagine, then the intention to be present will sort of be a counterweight. No, that's just that tendency to want to plan, and it's being known. So we don't have to go to war with the planning mind. We just need to see that it's something being known in the present moment. Because that's what we're cultivating, an allegiance to being present. Now, it's week 3. I should be able to quiz you and ask, the one question test, what does it mean? What do we mean by being aware or mindfully aware or present? What does that mean? So answer in your own mind, all of you online. Sometimes people on Zoom think they can be more anonymous. We know you're there. I'm looking at you, camera. Right? And all the people in the room, how do you answer that? How do we tell ourselves or remind ourselves what it is to be present, in an operational way? What is the mind actually doing when it's present, when it's aware, awake? Okay, so I'll answer, and of course, there's different ways to language it. And languaging it isn't the answer. The answer is to be able to do it. Being aware means awareness is recognizing the present moment, right? So there's an awareness, and my awareness is aware that I'm talking and that it's like this. And then my hands are out and that feels like this, right? So awareness is recognizing what consciousness is knowing. Don't you have that capacity to be aware of what your mind is doing, what your mind is knowing? Just like our mind can be conscious, but we can be unaware. And maybe I did this already earlier in the course, but we can drive home, but not really be aware when we're driving home, lost in thought, or listening to the radio or something, but not aware. We're still conscious of where to turn and speed up and slow down, but we're not aware of what the mind is doing, what the mind is conscious of. And initially it would feel, well, God, I can't be me if I'm aware. But that's just because it initially seems awkward. to be aware. But it becomes second nature once we cultivate the habit. It's like anything, Initially, you learn the piano, initially we're a klutz. But eventually, if you stick with it, whatever it is, walking, playing the piano, riding a bike, there's a certain naturalness and fluency. And it's the same thing with awareness, present moment awareness. Just that quiet, non-judging, clear, reflective awareness that it's like this. And it's in that, let's call it a wise space that awareness provides or allows for, then, and this is really, in Buddhist practice, it's considered a life-changing insight. It seems simplistic, what I'm about to say, but if we cultivate enough continuity of present moment awareness, then it becomes very clear in the mind what's skillful and what's unskillful. And it's not theoretical. It's not like what we learned in kindergarten. You shouldn't do this, you can't do that. But no, we feel directly that when I'm relating in this way or relating with this attitude, that's unskillful. And we know that directly. It doesn't matter what anybody else says, because that reflective awareness, like when I'm aware that I'm relating in this way, like with irritation, then I'm aware of what that sets in motion. Heaviness, Or when I'm relating wisely, kindly, patiently, or whatever, and then after enough times, the mind becomes aware that's skillful. That doesn't set in motion suffering or tension. It sets in motion release, the absence of tension. This is that really basic pragmatic learning that comes from the practice. The continuity of present moment awareness clarifies how to be skillful. And it's not like something you can write down. I mean, you could write it down, be kind, be committed to the truth, be generous, learn how to let go. But how the mind actually navigates each moment, how it sustains a skillful way of relating, a skillful way of being, that can only be discerned moment by moment. We can't have a plan. Like you might be really inspired when you go home tonight to be skillful, or those of you who are home after the class, I'm going to be really skillful with the people I live with, or whatever. But wanting to be really skillful, and even having what seems to you a good plan, what really helps, it's certainly nice to be committed, the wholesome desire to want to be skillful in life. And a plan might be helpful to some degree. But what really helps is to be aware. Because then if you start becoming unskillful, defensive, or whatever it might be, the awareness is going to be reflecting that back. The mind is relating like this, and it's tight. This is not the way. It's like, and it's not even in those words. I'm using words because I'm talking to you, but the discernment of what's skillful and unskillful is direct. And in Buddhism, you may not think of it this way, but we might call that moral sensitivity, because we're actually feeling directly like, this isn't helpful, this isn't skillful, this isn't wholesome, or this is wholesome, this is skillful, this is good. But when we're not aware, we can do all kinds of bad stuff, but we're not aware. We're in our thoughts like, well, they deserve it. So if I'm caught in that story, identified with that story, I'm not actually awake or sensitive or aware of what it feels like to be thinking this, to be doing this, to be relating in this way. Now, moral sensitivity is not the same as finger-wagging parent, inner parent in our mind, judging ourselves. Remember, I used that example, I forget if it was week 1 or week 2, about the mirror that's just quietly reflecting back. It's like this now. It's like this now. It's like this now. So if you're really acting out in an unskillful way, all wisdom and awareness is going to do is say, be reflecting back, it's like this now. In the sense of, this is what's getting set in motion. This is what it feels like when that gets set in motion. It's just reflecting it back. And that's what awareness, wisdom and awareness does. It provides a quiet, non-judging, continuous, wise feedback. It's that kind of quiet voice. In sort of non-Buddhist terms, we might call it conscience. But in Buddhism, we make a very important point. It's not personal. It's just a natural capacity of the mind to have that kind of moral sensitivity, but it depends on the continuity of present moment awareness. That's the key. And then life just starts to work better for us. So, the question, well, why learn to meditate? Why cultivate present moment awareness? Why develop a lifestyle of present moment awareness? The answer is, well, because it allows me to become more skillful, no matter the particular of the circumstance that I'm dealing with, navigating all the twists and turns of our life, happy times, challenging times, neutral times, ordinary times. It really helps us to navigate all of it. And that ongoing feedback, that moral sensitivity that wisdom and awareness provides, then we just are learning moment by moment by moment when it's skillful, when it's unskillful. And so the course correction is immediate. When we realize that the way I'm relating, the way my mind is understanding, the way my mind is acting, when there's clear comprehension, this isn't helpful, then the mind doesn't continue that way. It tries something else. If you're holding a really hot pan, you let go. So it's the same thing. When you see yourself relating in a way that's causing you and others suffering, stress, you stop. You don't even have to make yourself stop. You just stop. What keeps us doing stuff that is unskillful and causing ourselves tension is that there isn't that balanced, intimate presence. That's what's missing. So, we've been learning different techniques. So we did the body scan again. We've been doing that, a little bit of the body scan right at the beginning. So play with that at least once or twice a week. So you develop that skill, just moving through the body. Then we use another technique like being with the breath or being with the whole body as what we might call an exclusive anchor. Same with the body scan. It's not that it's one thing, because we're moving through the body in a systematic way, but in each moment there's something we're choosing to pay attention to. So that means we have a meditation anchor or object that we're aware of. So even though when we're with the breath or with our body or with the body scan, the mind gets drawn away, right? Because of the force of habit to worry, to plan, to imagine, to fantasize, to do what the thinking mind does, right? Whatever the habits might be. But because we've had a little bit of continuity in the moments before the distraction, then when the distraction happens and eventually mindfulness will kick back in, right? And we'll realize, the mind is planning, and the mind is relating to planning in this way. And then wisdom is going to discern, and this is skillful, and this is unskillful, right? So you get a little bit of, like whatever you catch your mind doing when you're distracted, notice, is this a cause for stress? It's not theoretical. Like, is your body, heart, mind starting to get bound up in a little or big way? Or not? Right? So it's like, it's not a theoretical question. You can feel like that activity that has preceded this moment of awareness, what is the karmic result of having been worrying or planning or imagining or fantasizing in the previous few seconds? It feels like this, right? So you might notice the residual tension, and then wisdom connects the dots. Oh, when the mind does that, relates in this way, then this kind of tension gets set in motion. This kind of stress gets set in motion. Oh, that's good to know, right? Isn't it good to know? In these subtle ways. Or you might notice in other moments, like where you have some continuity of present moment awareness, you might start to feel really light, like that buoyant bliss or joy. I'm not kidding. The heart can feel really good when the mind isn't doing what it normally does, getting in the different vortexes of our worries and fears and hopes and, all the self-centered dramas that we generally gravitate toward. Then it's feeling the absence of all that stress. Interestingly, joy in life is often more about the absence of the stress than that joy is a thing itself. Right? It's the absence of the heart being burdened. And you want to notice that. Oh, when the mind is present, when the mind is relating with wisdom, then this gets set in motion. The absence of stress, lightness, peace, tranquility. Oh, well, that's good to know too. And like I said, it may not sound like much, but I'm really sincere when I say this deepening insight into what is skillful, to be able to recognize what is skillful and to be able to recognize directly what is unskillful, is a real game changer. Because it moves us from any tendency we have to feeling helpless. Like I'm just suffering and happiness just seems to come at me, and I don't get it. Like, why I'm so miserable or why now I'm feeling so good. That starts to go away. It's like we know very well when the heart's burdened, we know what the mind has been doing. Because we're no longer chronically locating the cause of our suffering out to external factors. Because it's really how the mind relates. Right? We see this all the time. Little things happen to a friend of ours and they're totally upset. They lose it. They're really suffering, right? Really big things happen to another friend and they have a lot of equilibrium, a lot of balance, just doing what they need to do, but not suffering so much. So it really, the point we want to bring home is how the mind is relating to the present moment is the most important factor. A lot of what comes our way externally, there's not much we can do about. And yet we spend most of our life, trying to keep our body young and accumulating wealth but who among us is totally satisfied doing that? No. And it doesn't mean we give up on the project of putting money in the bank and taking care of our body. It just means that we're putting more and more emphasis on how is the mind relating and is it skillful or unskillful right now? How might the mind right now relate skillfully? So even if I'm really irritable and wisdom and awareness reveals, oh yeah, this is unskillful, then in the next moment, instead of hating that I'm being irritable, maybe just being kind with the irritation And then we'll feel like, oh yeah, that's skillful. Already the stress is dissipating. This forgiveness, this kindness, this patience, this understanding, oh yeah, sometimes the mind gets irritable and it feels like this. Can that be okay? Just to feel what's already been set in motion, right? Because I had been irritable, so the body, mind, heart is already a little bit or a lot bound up from having been irritable. That's already happened. So instead of getting irritable about being irritable, I can be kind and wise about having been irritable. Oh yeah. And I can be intimate with it, but without freaking out. And just let that tension that got set in motion from being irritable, let it dissipate in its own way, in its own pace, by learning how to be patient and forgiving, and even that kind of wise sense of humor. Yeah, it's the habit of the mind, isn't it, to get irritable, to think the traffic's out to get me, when we're stuck in traffic. And we personalize it, which is ridiculous. It isn't about me that there's traffic, or hot and humid and ozone, whatever the air quality problem that's going on right now. No. So why take it personally? If there's something we can do about the irritations, the difficulties in our life, well, then we calmly, wisely do those things. And if there's nothing right now to do about whatever it is that's difficult, well, then there's nothing right now to do about it. But why lose the equilibrium and the clarity and the intimacy? If there's something to do, do it. If there's nothing right now to do, then there's nothing right now to do. Why get upset? You might recognize this little teaching, because if you ever have read or watched the Dalai Lama, he loves this little teaching from the Buddhist tradition. It's actually from a person called Shantideva, a 9th century Indian Buddhist monk. And he had that teaching. And it's so simple and profound. So try it this week when there's something irritating you, something difficult. Not the worst thing in the world, but just like an ordinary thing that's pushing your buttons. Okay, it's like this now, like just a moment of awareness. It's like this. So what you're recognizing is something's arising and it's unpleasant and it's evoking this reaction to want to fix it or get rid of it or blame somebody. So you take, okay, it's like this, feels like this, it's tightness. And then just remember this teaching, okay, is there something that you can do that might be helpful? Or is it a kind of situation where right now there's nothing to do? But in either case, whether I'm going to do something or I'm not going to do something, why have an attitude that is setting in motion stress? Either do whatever needs you think would be helpful, but do it in a way that doesn't evoke stress. Or there's nothing to do, well then just be with the conditions of the moment, but without triggering stress. Which just means being intimate without reacting. And that's what we train, like when you sit for 15 minutes in the morning, and whether you're with the body or you're with the breath or you're with other predominant experience, if we want to be peaceful with conditions, then what do you think we practice? Being peaceful with conditions. So breathing in, well, can I be intimate with this in-breath without reacting, without trying to control it, without judging it? How about this, out-breath? Now this other thing has come into the forefront of my awareness, planning the day. Oh, planning mind. Can I be aware that there's planning mind without getting entangled with it? Right? Because that's what I have to do all day long. I might as well, and the relative simplicity of my formal sitting time, practice intimacy without the grasping. And have you noticed it's hard to be with the breath without being controlling of it. it's like we see how deep that habit is. Whatever we bring to mind, pay attention to, we have to manage. We connect with our partner, we want to manage them. You know, we think about ourselves, we want to, judge or manage ourselves. So in a moment we'll do some sitting practice, and we'll just remember there's a lot of learning in the distraction. So instead of thinking the distractions, oh, stop it. No, just be aware. This is what's happening now. I am practicing. It's just not my anchor, like being with the breath or being with the whole body, right? So I got distracted, but now I'm aware of having been distracted, so I'm not distracted. I'm aware that it's like this. And that's where we have that moment of feeling, what does it feel like to have been distracted? And that's why I mentioned last week, you can ask, well, what's the underlying feeling here? What does it feel like right now? So that's like that invitation, like if there's some tension that's arisen, the body and the mind's getting bound up in some subtle or not so subtle way, then acknowledge that and be aware of that. Oh, tightness. Can that be okay? Because the tightness is already here. So why make it into a problem if it's already like this? If the body or mind has got a squeeze going, why make another squeeze? Oh, I don't like that squeeze, right? No, there's a squeeze. Can I be intimate with the squeeze and let it be? And then when that whole issue is no longer predominant, then come back to the anchor. Whether for some of you it's just tracking the breath as it comes in, tracking the breath as it goes out. Other people probably practicing here in the intro class, you're working with the whole body as your primary anchor. But by this week, week 3, you should just decide what your training anchor is going to be. Do you want to come back to the whole body and be aware of the totality of sitting as your anchor? Does your mind find that more comfortable? Or do you like the more specificity of being with that tracking of the inhalation, exhalation, exhalation, right? They both have advantages and disadvantages. It's not like one's better than the other. Just choose. Because you want to really develop as a kind of spiritual friend. It's like my mind knows how to be with my anchor, the whole body or the breath. As soon as I come back to my breath now, it's like I feel there's some joy there immediately, because my mind really knows how to be intimate without grasping with the ordinary physicality of breathing in and out. So my mind immediately begins to drop all of its old ancient habits of struggling, because it's learned over 40 years of practice to just be with the in-breath and the out-breath in a really simple, pure, healthy way, in a way that doesn't involve stress or judgment or control, just to be aware. That's why we call it like a training anchor. So we want to kind of dig in and enjoy it and appreciate it. So why don't we take a moment, stretch our legs so we can sit for about 30 minutes, stand or whatever you need to do for a minute or two. And then whenever you feel ready, but there's no rush, come back into your sitting posture, and we'll get ready for our longer meditation for the evening. Listen to your body, find the posture that for you has both that quality of relative comfort, but also supports alertness. Some of us like to take a couple of longer, deeper breaths at the beginning of a sitting period. So take your time, really quiet, relaxed way of filling and emptying the lungs a few times. And learning to enjoy these slow, deep breaths. As if we have all the time in the world, we'll do one more. And eventually allowing the breath to continue on its own. So for those of you working with the breath as your primary anchor, just feeling the whole body until you can feel the breath moving in the body. Just the natural rhythm of breathing. We're not trying to breathe in any particular way. So that means even if the breath feels erratic or shallow or whatever, you just trust the body to breathe. And simply receiving the sensations of the inhalation and receiving the sensations of each exhalation and keeping the breath in mind. From the very beginning of the in-breath to the end, from the very beginning of the out-breath until the end. And when a stronger distraction arises, and naturally draws the attention, then as soon as you can, just acknowledge this is being known. And you can, if it's helpful, you can actually name it. Oh, planning mind is being known. You don't have to, but that sometimes can be helpful. And then just wonder, well, what's the underlying feeling here? Is there any underlying feeling here? Can I be with this feeling? Is it safe just to feel what's here to feel? And generally, after some time, whatever was predominant isn't predominant anymore. And then we can come back to our anchor. Same with those of you who are working with the whole body as your meditation anchor. You're not looking at particular sensations, but feeling all the sensations together. And you can even coordinate the breath, breathing in, being aware of the whole body. Breathing out, being aware of the whole body. So the beginning of each in-breath is the reminder to be intimate, open to the whole body. And the beginning of the out-breath is the reminder to be intimate with the whole body, just as it is, letting it be. So let's continue on our own for a while, and I'll give some more instructions later in the sit. Be willing to begin again and again and again and again. That's the real work of practice, is coming back to the present moment over and over. No need to get frustrated. No need to judge yourself. Just keep recognizing the present moment as it is. See if you can, in moments, discern when the mind is relating skillfully and you feel there's some wholesome momentum building. And in other moments, notice that the mind is relating unskillfully and the mind is getting entangled and tight. That's the natural result of being unskillful. So it's not about judgment, it's just about connecting the dots, seeing how it unfolds. Noticing what gets in the way of the continuity of present moment awareness without judging, just observing. And now for the last 5 minutes or so, we'll do this third style of practice where we could call that open awareness practice. You can even allow your eyes to open if you want. You don't have to, but we're not looking around, just gaze down toward the floor. So aware of the whole body sitting and aware of seeing and hearing, and of course aware of any mental activity, thoughts. So instead of using a meditation anchor, we simply acknowledge whatever's predominant moment by moment. It's always simply something is being known. Might be a sound that's being heard, or a sight that's being seen, a thought that's being known, an emotion that's being felt, bodily sensation that's being felt. And if you need support, you can ask from time to time, well, what's being known? What's the mind knowing? Can this be okay? And if this becomes hard or difficult, then just acknowledge that that difficulty is being known. Feels like this. Is it okay to feel what's here to feel? And you might find that the thinking mind is really active. But see if you can be aware of that without getting upset or needing to control things. Just observe. These are just thoughts being known. Mental activity is being known. And take a little time again and be aware as you stretch your body, move your limbs, whatever you need to do. Would you mind turning the top two lights? Right, yeah, the top two. Just bring a little bit more light into the room. Yeah, and then one more. Great, thanks. So as you can probably tell, I always have a lot I can say, but we learn so much when people share what they've been learning, both your practice tonight, but this last week, challenges that showed up for you, other beautiful experiences or learnings that showed up for you, questions that are emerging. And for the people here in the room, you can either just speak where you are and I'll repeat it for the people online, or you can sit up here and I'll hand you the mic so that the people online can hear you, your own voice, if that's okay, whatever you prefer. And the people online, you can just unmute yourself. Yeah, so what have you been learning? We've been in it now for a couple weeks. What have you been learning by awareness? What supports the continuity? What gets in the way? Next week, week 4, we do a deeper dive into the obstacles. What gets in the way of the continuity of present moment awareness? And how do we relate to that? Yeah, so what comes to mind? Any questions or comments? Yeah, please.
Hi, everybody. My name's Dan. One thing I've been wondering about this week was we talk about the sensory gates, and I feel like when I rest my attention on my breathing, I'm still fairly able to be aware, I think, of what my body's feeling, hearing, without losing track of my breathing. But then the thinking mind comes in, and I feel like I can't, I guess I'm wondering the difference between thinking and awareness and attention in terms of, is there a time when I'll be skillful at this where I can be aware that I'm thinking and the thinking will continue to its natural end? Because now when I become aware of thinking, the thinking stops and I go back to the breath. So I don't know if that makes sense. I guess, I can be aware of other sensations, but the thinking stops. And something you mentioned tonight, maybe it's not skillful to be thinking, so maybe it's okay that it stops. And so
Brought up a lot. And one of the things that we see immediately when someone shares like that is there's a lot of learning. And if you said something like that at a cocktail party, people would think you're weird, right? It's like, but we kind of start getting it because we're realizing there's some value in turning the awareness and observing. And just that point that you made, that when awareness, when wisdom and awareness is aware that there's mental activity, and this could be a little homework assignment if you haven't had that little moment, what happens when wisdom and awareness notices that there's thinking? Does it do, as you mentioned, just quickly disappear or hide behind something? Because it's not easy actually to be aware of mental activity and the mental activity just to continue. It helps a little bit if we are really intimate with our anchor, because like you suggested, all of the functions, the sensory functions, they just keep happening. Even if I'm really attentive to breathing in and breathing out, or attentive to hearing, it's not like seeing, the sensitivity to visual experience stops, right? So all that stuff is still happening, and mental activity is usually happening all the time. And we're not, like you suggested, we're not trying to make stuff stop. We want to actually see things as they are. That's where the deepening of insight happens, not by suppressing our experience, but by observing it kind of in its natural setting. right? Like seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and mental activity being known. Because ultimately, we want to really see that all of this sensitivity to the five senses and sensitivity to mental activity, that's the sixth, all of that is actually nature. None of that actually is personal. Although our habit is to interpret it as being personal. And because, it's precisely because we take thinking personally that when I'm aware that there's thinking, well, then I'm the one who's aware, so I can't be thinking, right? So it's actually some ignorance is imposing itself on the moment, as opposed to these six things, these six sensitivities, and the six things that these six sensitivities are sensitive to: mental activity, sounds, sights, smells, tastes, and touches. They're just going to happen. And so when our practice has more confidence, more momentum, you'll see that the whole shebang, thoughts, sights, sounds, it's kind of like almost counter to what we might think. We might think that as I develop my practice, it will get quieter and quieter. And it's true. We do have some sitting times when things get very still and the mind retreats from sense experience. It kind of draws in a sense, into the stillness, into the silence. And it appears that there's very little that the mind is sensitive to. And that's what we would call a concentrated meditation. A lot of concentration, a lot of samadhi is the Pali word. But where there's more wisdom, when there's more wisdom developing, we're really more in that ordinary state of consciousness, not a highly concentrated state, but the mind is really present. And there are a lot of objects. Wisdom is noticing thoughts, sights, sounds, and on the surface, we might think, I must be doing a lousy job at my practice because there's a lot happening. But actually, when you understand better, you realize, no, there's momentum because the mind is seeing more. It's recognizing more and more how it always is. Because what characterizes our experience as a human being is ceaseless sense impingement through these six sensitivities. We're seeing, we're hearing, we're smelling, tasting, touches, thoughts. All of them, in a sense, are touching what's sensitive. One of the reasons we gravitate towards distraction is we want to break from the exposure because it's a lot. But it takes some time to realize that it's okay to be sensitive to all of this. And that's what we call equanimity or non-attachment. It's like intimacy without the grasping, without the control, without the fear of the exposure. That's real freedom. To be able to see what we see and hear what we hear and touch what's being touched and noticing the emotions and thoughts that are coming and going. But something is unmoved, unshaken by all of that sensitivity. That's called real peace. And that's spiritual peace. That's the peace that arises with wisdom, is that we can be a human being with all the sensitivity that comes with being human and all the messiness that we're sensitive to. But there's something, you can call it wisdom, you can call it whatever you want, but there's something that remains still or empty or silent or clear in the midst of this very real lived human experience. So it's not like we're disconnected. We're really there, intimate, more sensitive. But there's no problem with the sensitivity. That's why I tagged on, and I recommend you do this at home when you're sitting. Save a little time at the end, and just to distinguish it from the way you were practicing that builds more that concentration, that samadhi, open your eyes for that last 5 minutes or whatever the amount of time is. You're still practicing the continuity of present moment awareness, but you're not using a meditation object. So that means whatever's predominant, whatever the attention is naturally going to attend to, that's what you're aware of in that moment. Now you're aware of this, and now you're aware of that. Hearing is being known, seeing is being known, thinking is being known, feeling the attitude or the emotion is being known, smell is being known, right? So whatever it is, it's just one, and you see that's much more like daily life. So it's really helpful, in daily life, you can find little anchors for moments, like you're walking from here to there, or use the physicality of walking to refresh and build a little momentum. But then when somebody interrupts you and you're in the interaction, then be aware of that. Maybe you're self-conscious. Okay, self-consciousness is being known. Wondering what I'm going to say is being known. And then we're in that kind of cacophony of different phenomena coming and going and being known. And it can seem like it should be a problem, but really check, is it a problem that so much is being known? Can this be okay to be feeling, sensing this much? Does there have to be somebody who has a problem? And if there is, then let that be something that's being known. Oh, having a problem feels like this. This is just another thing being known. The me, the sense of a me having a problem with all the sensitivity is like this. Now, you can't think about this. You got to experiment. That's the key. Really try, really value the continuity of present moment awareness. And no matter how much you feel like you're cornered or you got to do something, do whatever you're going to do, but be aware. Oh, it's just this being known. And remember that being aware doesn't keep you from doing whatever you're going to do. Just be aware. Even in your sitting practice, I really want to move my body. Wanting to move is like this, right? That's the practice. The practice isn't that you do move or you don't move. When you do move, you'll notice that the concentration starts to dissipate. So there are reasons, if the pain is such that you can work with it, then don't move your body. But if you have to move your body, then you have to move your body. Then but do it in awareness. Like, notice you want to move first. Notice you are moving next. Notice what that sets in motion. Now you're thinking, I'm a failure at meditation because I moved. Okay, judgment is like this. Judging is being known. That's the key. Just keep always coming back to, what's the mind knowing now? Oh, it's knowing this. This is what's being known. Other thoughts online or in the room here? Anything else? Questions you have, experiences you want to share with the group?
I have an experience.
Yeah, Claire, 1 second. Let me get the mic on you. Okay, Claire, go ahead.
I tried while walking my dog and gardening this week to drop into present moment awareness. And one of the things I noticed is how physically fidgety or tense I was. And so one of the first immediate sensations was just relax. I didn't try to relax, but it was like kind of inadvertent almost to relax and stop fidgeting so much. And so I think that maybe for me, fidgeting and physical tension accompanies most of my distracted day. So
that's a powerful discovery, isn't it? And this is a perfect example what Claire said. Remember, I was talking earlier in the evening about awareness. The continuity of awareness will reveal skillfulness and unskillfulness. And that's a perfect example what Claire said. So there was more awareness, more continuity of awareness, and then that revealed the chronic unskillfulness of holding tension in the body and mind. And when it was seen, not with judgment, but with awareness, then what happens? To whatever degree the body and mind can release that tension, that happens. And Claire didn't say, I tried to get rid of that tension and I did. No, the letting go of that tension happened naturally. The supporting cause for the letting go of the tension was the seeing it as it is, the unnecessary holding of bodily tension. When that's seen, letting go happens. When it's unseen, the habit continues. Unfortunately. Thanks, Claire, for sharing that with us. Time for one last comment or question. Anything in the room? Yeah, please. Do you want to say it there or do you want to come and? Okay. Is there a difference between distraction or distracted mind and unconscious mind? No, I mean, when we say unconscious, it doesn't mean, like the English term unconscious, it just means we're not aware. Like I drove home and I wasn't conscious. I mean, you were conscious, you just weren't aware of what you were doing. So it's interesting, like we're aware, I mean, we're conscious, everything's in a sense getting recorded. It's like whether you're consciously aware of feeling your body against the chair, the body is sensitive to that contact, your body against the chair, right? So distraction, unconsciousness, it just means that there's an absence of an awareness that's recognizing what the mind is sensitive to. So, and that's the chronic problem with us untrained humans, is that we're operating as humans, but we haven't developed that spiritual or mental muscle to be aware of how it is, to be aware of what the mind is sensitive to, what the body is sensitive to. So whether we call that distraction or being unconscious, it just means there isn't an awareness of it. And really open your mind to how much awareness there can be. That momentum, building the habit and momentum of present moment awareness, it can be really continuous at times, where we're just sensing everything. And I think I might have mentioned this before, but it isn't so easy to be aware because we sense everything. But it actually is what causes wisdom to deepen. Because in a way, what wisdom is that understanding that allows us to be as sensitive as we are. It's not afraid of the exposure. That's what wisdom is. Wisdom is okay when it feels, looks, is like this. That's the very definition of wisdom. Oh yeah, it's like this. So if there's something to do, do it. If there's nothing to do, there's nothing to do. But wisdom understands, like, yeah, sometimes it's like this. That it can't be right now. Is it true? It can't be different than this right now. Does that make sense? It's like, given everything that's in motion, this is how it is. Wisdom deeply understands that. It doesn't create unhelpful conflict. Like, why would I be in conflict with the way it is right now? Like the weather or the temperature in the room. Because it's already this way. Doesn't mean I won't go change the thermometer or the thermostat, but it is this way, or my body feels this way, or my mind, thinking mind, is this way right now. So why be in conflict with it? If there's something I can do about it, do it. If there's nothing to do about it, there's nothing to do about it. But I'm not going to be in conflict with reality. Do what needs to be done, or don't do anything if there's nothing to be done, but don't be in conflict. And you can just play with this as whenever it comes to mind, walking out of the building now or doing whatever you're going to do next, because our time is up. Just like that, how awareness and the continuity of awareness really allows for that beautiful balance. And it's not a distant, indifferent balance. It's really an intimate balance. Like we're really there, but we're just realizing, yeah, awareness just sort of makes everything pragmatic, like do what needs to be done, but don't be tight. Like, I forget the person's name that mentioned, like, oh, why is the body tight? Why is the body fidgeting? Hey, I can put down that load. That's such a wonderful discovery. So we have 3 more weeks. Remember, I've been saying it's easy to want to just, oh, I'll do it later, next year. But you really want to not just keep showing up on Tuesday night for the next 3 weeks, but putting a little time in every day, even if it's all you have is 2 minutes, put some time in every day. And then really appreciate the moments during your busy day when it just comes back online. That's practice too. Okay, so I'll see you next Tuesday. Have a good week. Thanks for coming, everyone.